Right. Let's see if this is working okay, because we've both been connecting in new things. Hello,
Exactly.
Chantel. Hello, everyone in the chat. How are you doing today?
Hello, everybody. Hello, Catherine. Thank you so much. I've got a new laptop and a new camera, and I'm feeling very all up in my own face here right now with funny coloring. So,
Well,
guys, you're all just going to have to give me a moment to figure my technology out here. Grandma is still living in 1983, where we throw paper jets around.
it's giving you a lovely suntan, though, so
I
keep it.
know, I
But
know.
really,
Usually I'm so pale. Now I'm like
really
looking as
proud.
though I've been in Asia too long.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. So, I mean, welcome everyone who's joining us in the chat, and I'm so looking forward to this today. I've even made some notes, which I very rarely do, because we're going to be talking as much as we can on this channel, and we'll giggle. We'll tell you why we're giggling about it in a minute. About censorship, dissent, and misinformation. And the reason I wanted to talk about this today is I've been very reflective the last few weeks. Chantel, very reflective about, right, where are we at collectively? Where am I at? Where do I want to be putting my time? Because it can feel sometimes when we're sort of talking about these issues to be like in a wheel that we can't then move the wheel forward, going over the same old issues over and over again. And I'm like, I am so ready to sort of move that wheel forward. And we have to be a little bit careful on the platforms we're streaming on. And all our lovely listeners know this. And we do want your input in the chat. So, Chantel, you're being sent for training, aren't you, on YouTube?
That was private and confidential, Catherine.
Oh, sorry, I didn't know that. Oh, I think it's hysterical because it must be a new
It
thing
is.
bringing in.
I feel like I've been wrapped over the knuckles by YouTube. They struck me again on some video that I did, and usually they give you a 90-day strike, but it's there now, and that was like 6 months ago already. And I didn't see it until the other day, actually. I thought they were just going to take it off. And I thought, why the hell have I still got a strike? And then I looked and it said, for me to remove the strike, I've got to go for YouTube training.
Which I
where, where they're going to teach me which words I'm allowed to use on YouTube or not.
And actually, in all seriousness, I find that quite useful because I'm constantly, it's a bit like speeding points on your driving license. As soon as one lot expire, and that's a bit like me on YouTube, and they keep striking us for things, for conversations we had 6 months or a year ago, which we can't remember what we said. Plus, also, it's a very moving goalpost. But
Yeah.
actually, I really wanted to, for us, and I really, really want to hear how people are feeling in the chat about this. I wanted to start off, Chantel, by asking you about the whole issue of self-censorship, because we talk about these big bad naughty people censoring us all, whether it's our politicians, whether it's police people, whether it's school teachers, whether it's social media platforms. But equally, I was doing some digging back into V for Vendetta. Tell me in the chat who's watched V for Vendetta. Let us know in the chat if you've watched that. And this whole issue of self-censorship, it seems to be really playing out over the last few years in particular. What comes up for you when we talk about that?
Just a big muddle, actually. I was just thinking as you were talking, I was sort of running through the past few years, and my God, how things have changed in the past few years. I mean, I remember just before lockdown began, I was living my best life in Thailand, right? Um, we didn't even know YouTube censorship existed,
Yeah.
right? And suddenly now, when all this and there's so many new platforms that have gone up, the whole world has changed since lockdown. And I think, Catherine, for me, that was the first step. I think many of us are thinking we're home free and footloose and fancy free now. It's only just beginning. And I think this that we're experiencing now is really just a further clamp down. So it's like we all got excited having our own channels, for example. A lot of survivors coming up. I mean, I know from the get-go, I was on the censored list. Okay? So I've had this from the get-go. But look, if we think about it realistically and holistically, yes, I do think certain things should be censored, especially if it's age appropriate, most definitely. I think certain things should not be for children. I don't think any graphic cruelty or base cruelty should be allowed. There should be certain programs or certain, what do you call it when there's an age limit, PG. Maybe they should have channels where there's a certain PG and that's more monitored. I do believe censorship, when it's age appropriate, maybe religion appropriate, but there again, people have got to make their own choices. But we both got kids. We know what kids are like, and we know that kids are going to do exactly what you tell them not to do. Okay? That's nature. That's human nature. That's life. But for me, censorship as a whole, it should be fair. You can't have censorship where, I mean, I was seeing this disgusting thing on Facebook the other day of this bear with a big fat willy, okay, like that, doing its thing, and it's a battery toy, and it's all over, and people on this, and it is a genuine plastic willy. Okay, I don't know what I can call it here. Censorship.
Find out soon when you've done your training.
Yeah, exactly. And then what happened was then someone reported it, and they saw no harm with that. And that, I mean, and I actually posted that. I was horrified. That was not out of their standards. However, us that talk about healthy stuff, alternative medications and stuff, how to empower yourself, basically, that's censored on another level. So I think what we're seeing here right now is it's got nothing to do with censorship, but it's all about control. So I think there's a big difference between censorship appropriately and control. This is not censorship, in my opinion, Catherine. This is control. And I know we also talk about it on my show with Bryce, what the word heretics really mean. Heretic is someone, I mean, I know this, my father told me this many moons ago. There's someone who goes against the government. That was his explanation to me. And I thought, well, I'm a heretic then. We've always been, so people are labeled things. They are shamed into believing that they are the wrong, they're in the minority, so they must be wrong. But I agree. I mean, as I said, to wrap it all up, I think appropriate censorship, yes, and it has to be fair. And it's not, and freedom of speech should be, hate speech, I agree, is something that should be censored. Anything inflammatory, anything extremely violent, but these are things that are happily on our screens, yet, I don't know, other stuff is not allowed. Yeah.
It's so interesting. So I'm going to come back to a few of these, and thank you for your comments in the chat. We're going to come to these definitely, so please keep them coming. But I just want to pick up on a couple of things there. So I would come back to that and say, first and foremost, the whole issue is who decides what's fair. So in terms of what censorship is, because that's different to all of us, we've only got to look at a lot of the discussions that a lot of people are having in their families. If we take the intervention, for example, and I still can't say that without getting into trouble, so let's just call it the pat on the shoulder intervention. There's equally one side who think it was completely fair to censor people that are saying it's dangerous to have it, and the other side equally think it's fair to stop the people that are saying it's dangerous not to have it. So the thing is the fair is always in the eye of the beholder. It's like beauty's in the eye of the beholder. So it's a really, really tricky one. And secondly, in terms of the self-censorship, I'm really interested to hear your opinion, and everyone in the chat. How many of us are really aware of how much they're censoring themselves in conversations now? So whatever is in your environment, what about all the pronouns that they were meant to be using now? And when you made a really interesting point there, Chantel, about everything's changed since 2020, but I wonder whether it has, because now with my new eyes, I look back and I see how, say, my parents' generation talk about, again, you see, I'm self-censoring myself here because I don't know what to do, what you're allowed to say about people of colour. We're all people of colour. I'm white with pink blotchy patches. When I go out cold, I get a red nose with it as well, so, but apparently I'm not allowed to say people of color now. You have to call everyone, well, what do you call everyone? 50 shades of gray. We're all different. So how much do people find that they're so worried about self-censoring, and how do they think that plays in to the whole political agenda? Because when you're looking, for those of us, there's quite a few people in the chat that have watched V for Vendetta, but also the Hunger Games and things, the whole censorship, the self-censorship is such a powerful tool of control. And if we don't feel comfortable saying our opinions in a respectful way, because you can say your opinion without expecting anyone else to agree with it. I think this is where people have completely lost track of reality. Just because I say my opinion to Chantel doesn't have to agree with it, but we can still express them in a polite way and sort of learn from each other. So who decides it's fair? This is one of the issues that they're having with Telegram, that they're having with X, that we're having with everywhere. First and foremost, let's discuss that. Who can decide what's fair to put on there and what isn't?
Well, and that there right there is a fair point. Who does decide? But I think, when we move into a more evolved society, and, but I want to preface that by saying, I think censorship, if we look at perfection doesn't always feel good. So maybe in the bigger scheme of things, all the censorship has been extremely necessary in order for us to see what doesn't need to be censored, or does need to be censored, if you know what I'm saying. Look, I think there are enough constructive experts in the world to understand how a child's brain and development works. What is good for kids and what is not good for kids. All we have to do is look at the MK Ultra and how kids have been programmed, and versus those kids who have not been programmed or tortured or abused. I think as human beings, we all desire to be happy, to be heard, to be respected, right? So I think we've got to start with that. And I mean, I think the way things have gone now, obviously giving control to the parents, that would seem ideal, but we also see that a lot of parents are not capable of controlling their children. And we're also seeing that those parents who can't take care of their kids, put them in the system, and you're just giving them to the wolves. So the bottom line is, who do you trust, right? And who do you hand your most precious children over to? Because that's where I believe it does begin. So I think that in itself is a conversation or a 10-part show about how we can do that. Okay, but I would say that would be the first thing to look at. And I don't want to say I censor myself, but I think, having been a healer for many years, I don't like to hurt people's feelings. So I'm careful about how I choose my words. However, on the other hand, when I'm pissed off, I've got a mouth like a razor as well. So there's definitely that flip, and I can certainly say things that should be censored. I really think when it comes to that, you've got to speak your truth. You've got to express what works for you in a way that is respectful. You can't always, you have no control over how someone else is going to receive your words or your product or whatever it might be. But you can put it in a way that you feel comfortable and congruent with expressing it. You're not always going to win. I mean, we know we're not in this game to win friends, right? I know I'm so not. I mean, I get more punches on the chin than anything else, I guess. So it doesn't matter. But my point is, you've got to be comfortable with how you express yourself, and you've got to do so truthfully. Even if you go to a country like Saudi Arabia, where you can't show your face or your legs or your shoulders or something, It's your choice to go there. Be respectful of the culture.
Mm-hmm.
So then put a Habib on if that's what is required of you. Otherwise, don't go to the country. If you don't like the shows I'm putting out there, don't watch them. But if you have constructive criticism or something for me that can help a situation, I'm so happy to hear you. You see what I'm saying? I really think it's more about um, kindness and expressing your truth and accepting that not everyone is going to agree with you. And you can have beautiful debates, and it's always important to listen because that's how we learn. For me, Catherine, it's such a thing about this whole thing has come from divide and conquer. And we're so scared to hurt each other's feelings or offend each other. I will never stop saying God has only created two genders. Now, if you want to go and change your gender for whatever reason, I don't mind. I don't mind you doing that. But that's your personal decision. Like it might be somebody's personal decision to have a boob job. That's your personal decision. If you want to have anything done to your body, then you've got to respect yourself enough to know that not everyone is going to agree with you. So,
Mm.
or whatever. You know what I'm saying? We've got to get to the place of self awareness, I think. Self awareness is going
I,
to be the key to a lot
yeah,
of things.
I think this comes back in. I've got Harry's one on stream because I censor according to the environment. I never blow people's borders. And that's a really interesting one because a lot of us, we don't want to offend people, but equally, hard truths have to, I'm so sick to death personally of hearing people saying, oh, well, it's just going to be too overwhelming when the truth comes out. Well, that's life. Get real. If you're try being a bunny rabbit, you can't say to the bunny rabbit, the fox isn't behind you. It is, and it's about to be eaten. And I think the same is the same with us, is that it's like sometimes you can't just go through life and do a favor to people by only telling them nice things that aren't going to trigger them, aren't going to um, offend them. We've all been offended. I'm regularly offended
Yeah.
because everyone's misunderstood. Put your hand up in the audience. Tell us if you're one of the people that hasn't got a family member that isn't still labeling you how you might have behaved when you were 14, not how you're behaving when you're 50. This is what families do. We get stuck in this cycle of you were like that once, so therefore you're going to be like that for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And I think the reason why the censorship is so important to this, and I love this, what Jennifer's done, it makes me so sad, the censorship I hear in people's conversations. I often reassure people that I prefer them to speak freely. How can we communicate if we aren't being real? And the reason I pulled up Harry and Jennifer's comments is the fact that how much do we take responsibility for being authentic? So obviously, Harry, when you're not on screen with us, so I'm not saying you mean this with one sentence, but if we're always trying to second guess what we can get away with and what is going to upset someone and what isn't, then how can they really trust us as a friend? How can we really? Because if you're communicating with an open heart and an open pair of ears, then your opinion shouldn't offend other people. If you're not taking responsibility for how you do that, then it will offend someone. We're all going to have whatever we say, whatever our opinions are. I mean, oh my goodness, try seeing one of my posts on social media about what people eat. It's ridiculous. Nowadays, you can't eat kale and spinach because of the oxalate. You can't eat this because of that. Every single vegan supports Bill Gates. Every single, I mean, it's just so ludicrous how people go from 2 and 2 to make 5. So with this whole censorship, which is horrendous in the UK at the moment, we've literally got people of our age, Chantel, being put in jail for saying something ridiculously pathetic on social media, and they've been put in jail for 2.5 years, whereas we've got criminals who've are people and all sorts of horrible things being let out on the street because they're a certain ethnic minority and they don't want to label everyone as an illegal immigrant. You know, I think someone said in the chat earlier, it's gone completely mad. But I do think that when I'm looking at the bigger picture and how much we're criticising politicians, which I think they all deserve to be criticised, how much we're criticising news reporters, I do think when we look at our actions as individuals, we have to do the work on ourselves so we're not being offended, so we're being authentic. Why can't we have a conversation about all the different genders without offending people? Why can't we listen and have a conversation to understand why is that offensive and why do people censor themselves? You know, I genuinely want to understand. I do want to understand because different generations have always struggled to understand each other. You're always growing up. You can't compare the people that are growing up now with how we grew up because so much is different.
It's so true. And that's why I must say, I think we love our grannies. You know, those of us who've had wonderful grandparents have been such a blessing. I only knew one of my grandmothers until she passed away when I just turned 10. So, but I remember just that learning, you know. And yes, the new generation coming in, I think our children are actually our greatest teachers because they come in innocent, they come in pure, they come in with their ideas. And I think, yes, it's important that we as parents can guide them, but we've got to learn from them. We've got to learn what they're telling us. When a child says, I can see a spirit, that means its third eye is open. But we've also, you know, I think we've also had to walk this path. You know, we've had to walk this path back into love, back into light. Look, we just have to realize when we're looking at where the world's at, it is absolutely so clear that it is governed by the Luciferians. And that is something we have to realize. So they're going to do everything in terms of divide and conquer, division, separation. You know exactly what they're doing now. So they're taking this world and they're turning it into their ideal world, right? Which is all about transgenderism, transhumanism, AI, whatever, no soul, no connection. I mean, in Japan, was it you that I was talking on, or was it Jesse? It might have been Jesse. They have got these virtual restaurants now where people are sitting with goggles, sucking food out of a straw. What the hell? And you don't even know what it's like. Insane. So my point is that if you like that, then by all means, hey, be my guest. That's not my liking. And I really think, Catherine, it all comes down to reconnecting with ourselves and reconnecting with spirit. And when we are connected to our higher force that guides us and prompts us, and we're aligned and in tune and turned on by this godly electricity, if you want to call it that, that flows through us in its natural state, that way supersedes anything else because the key here is frequency. Frequency is the vibration, right? So you're not going to be on the same vibration as someone who's doing that stuff. That's why right now we've come in, dimension 3 is free will and choice. We make a choice. And as Bryce will always talk about, going 4D positive or 4D negative, service to self or service to the universe. And I think this is what we have to do right now. If people are ignorant to why this is happening, then they caught in already. If people are saying, yeah, we must do this, and no one's allowed to say anything, and we must all just comply, because the younger generation wants us to comply with their desires. But prior to that, we ask them to comply with our desires. So who's right and who's wrong? You know, that's what I'm saying. I understand. I have a Libra moon in astrology. So I have the ability naturally to see both sides of the coin. So it's often very difficult for me to make a decision because I might not like it, but I can understand it, if that makes sense. And I can understand why youngsters want to do what they want to do to their own bodies because they've never been able to do that before. Now, in my opinion, that's dangerous, but they don't seem to think it is.
Yeah, I think I agree with what Harry's saying. It's how we talk, not what we talk about. And when you see someone that can have a debate in a respectful way without losing their rag, it's so impressive and so unusual. I mean, I think Robert Kennedy Jr. can debate very, very well. I mean, he without losing his rag and maintaining his integrity. And I think so few of our role models can do that. You know, it goes, emotions get heightened so quickly, and slur words get taken, and ridicule and facial expressions and everything. Because I think this is the thing, is you can tell when you're talking to someone, if you're pulling a face and making an expression that's really shutting them down and being condescending, and then you're surprised with what comes back. Because again, I'm starting to really get what a lot of the people mean, like people like David Icke, when they say we've just got to say no. And what I think is, if we started having these conversations in our families, in our communities, in the supermarket, in the schools, with other parents, if we started being more authentically ourselves as individuals, because I see constantly in the comments, not necessarily today actually, but normally, like, I just don't want to upset people. And I'm like, well, that's weak then. So you're happy for everyone else to upset people, for your beliefs to be brought into reality, but you're not happy. And why do you have a belief that it has to upset people? You know, why can't we help each other express things in a different way?
You know, one of the things that I've come across so often over the years is people hate confrontation. Now, for the average person, confrontation means a big fisticuff and screaming and shouting and fists flying. Not at all. Confrontation is an art. So, confrontation, I mean, think about it. You've got to confront the situation that's causing you distress now, whether it's a person, whether it's your bank manager, whether it's your whatever, your child, your whatever. But a situation needs to be confronted. So instead of saying, let's go and confront that bastard now, no, it's again the word, it's the intonation of the word, right? So to confront a situation, now confrontation is an art. And one way to confront someone or a situation, which is very, very healthy, is to always speak from your own perspective. The words always and never shouldn't even enter your vocabulary when you never this and you always that. I mean, talk about how to push away friends, right? And win enemies. You always this and you never that. Speak from your perspective. For example, it would seem to me that you're not happy today. Or it seems to me that you're a little bit grumpy. Did I upset you? So you have no option. You're putting out a question and you're inviting an answer. You're not throwing your opinion and saying, this is the way it is. Because when you do that, you're not giving that person any room to talk. So what I've learned through years of therapy is to always ask the questions, even if you think you know the answer. And it is, especially me, because I'm intuitive, I can perceive things already. That person's going to get to I'm going to hear what the person's got to say in 20 minutes time. I know it. I know exactly what they're going to tell me. And now they're just going to create a drama, because the more you talk about a negative situation, you create more of a negative energy around it. So often I don't want to go there. So I'll say, okay, I get that, but what about that?
I'm going to stop you there, because even that, you've just generalized.
Hang on. I'm not finished. I'm not finished talking. So let me just finish. So what I realized through that is that is not the way to do it, right? It's not my opinion that matters. I have my opinion. And even if I think my opinion is my opinion, I'm still going to ask the question, even if I think I know the answer. And that's how you learn about people. You ask them, they will tell you. Even if you think they're lying to you, doesn't matter. You put the question out and you allow them to respond. And that's how we actually build bridges, not assuming things, not demanding things, not perceiving or assuming that I know everything about everything. Always ask the question, and then you'll get your answer. And from there, you then find your solution.
Yeah, I think, Harry made a really good point. It's how we ask it and things. And it's very obvious
Exactly.
communicating to people, whether you've already made your mind up what the solution or the question's going to be.
Exactly.
I think when we're looking at, I just wanted to read out sort of one of the definitions of dissent that I found, because I think this really plays into what we're seeing at the moment. Dissent refers to the expression or holding of opinions that differ from those officially or commonly held, particularly in political, social, or religious contexts. It often involves disagreement with established authority, policies, or popular views. Dissent can take various forms, including verbal criticism, protest, non-compliance with laws or regulations. And it's really interesting because there's no way of denying that at the moment we're seeing a shutdown of dissent across the whole of all of our society. I think where most people are watching from at the moment, we're suffering from a lot of, common problems for all of us. And I think it's so easy to see when we see it on the big scale. So when you suddenly have an account taken down, I think lots of our listeners have had loads of their social media accounts taken down. When you see that you can't say certain things in certain situations and it's immediately taken down, or a video centered down, or you can't even use certain words, it becomes really obvious. But of course, the problem has been building up in the background for ages before it's got to that stage. And it's like, how often in our daily conversations do we challenge the norm? Because if we don't, it's every little step that we don't challenge in a respectful way that's almost giving consent to people to get more and more extreme and more into a sort of Hunger Games society, which we're seeing play out big time now in so many of our countries. So I'd love to hear from in the chat.
It's been like that forever. We've always been Hunger Games. We've always been Hunger Gamed.
So I'd love to see from people in the chat, how do you see this play out in your societies? What are you seeing in your day-to-day life where you feel you can't speak about, whether it's with your family, with your bosses, with your neighbours, etc.? What's really hitting hard for you at the moment? But yeah, we can say it's always been a Hunger Game, but what we're seeing now is it's so easy to control people because so much of our communication is done online now. It's much harder for people to control the conversations you're having with your neighbour, because anyone who's got Alexia, they're listening to you. But in general speaking, your local politician isn't going to hear those things. But nowadays, so many of our conversations online, they've just got to press a button and get rid of you.
Yeah, exactly. And they do that. But I think, that's really, again, that again is just proof of the society in which we live in. And that's not censorship, that is control. That's plain and simple control. They will label it as censorship, but it's not, for sure.
Yeah, and there is a thing, what is the difference in the definition of censorship and control? It's a bit like dark to night. At what stage do you say it's turned from dark to night? Yeah. And it's a really, really hard one. I love that, Harry. How do you argue with donkeys? I never argue with donkeys.
Yeah, exactly. Donkey is not something. Have you seen a donkey? Have you seen someone try to pull a donkey? Seriously, because that donkey, I don't know, you can get a tractor to try and move that thing, it will not move.
and population. So yeah. So what do people think about? Carol's saying that she's getting loads of like loads of throwback from people about not voting in the election and everything, because so often these problems that we're talking about, if there was an obvious solution, it would be obvious, but there isn't an easy solution. So things like voting in the elections, it made me laugh so much. We see these even in our communities, you know, like in the UK, we've got our Labour idiots and things. And I think we all know that so many of the elections are so corrupt and it's predetermined. But it's so funny when people throw it back at you, well, you guys voted for them. You're like, well, none of us did. You know, that's such a big, I mean, the turnout for the UK elections were really, really low this year, if we believe the figures. I mean, who believes the figures? But it's so interesting, isn't it, in terms of with the misinformation. Let's look at the malinformation. They change the goalposts the whole time. So they've invented this phrase now, malinformation, that again, I heard Robert Kennedy say, they invented it for him, I think, initially, where the information is true, but it's counted as it's against the actual you know, what the political parties or what the controllers in whatever thing it might be want you to say. So therefore they can ban it because it's against that. So they're putting in these rules all the time to make it harder and harder. I mean, we are really moving into very authoritarian. You can call something a democracy, but it's not a democracy if the actions don't tie up with the label.
There's no democracy. I mean, these are all just made up words. You know, and I think that is what the biggest crushing bit of information is going to be for most people, is that they're going to realize that everything has been a lie. Not only, I mean, and this is why when we're looking at things like that's happening at the moment, like Jay-Z and Beyonce and P. Diddy and Justin Bieber and this whole horrific story going on here. I mean, the people are taking down the idols. The idols are starting to fall. They are not being taken down by governments or FBI or CIA or in South Africa, the Hawks, right? The people are taking their idols down. It's us, the people, taking them down. We are the one, but we put them up there, right? We did. They dangled the carrot and we said, yes, please, we love that one. We want her music. We want more of her. We want her fashion. We want more of her. That's how it worked, right? We brought them into power unknowingly. Everyone, not just the celebs, the politicians, the whoever's there. So it's up to us to wake up and decide we no longer choose that. And to me, that's what it's about. You know, Catherine, no matter what situation in life is playing itself out, whether it's censorship, whether it's pedophiles or whatever it is, whatever is going on here right now, everything will change and dissolve once we wake up and take charge. And as you were saying about Robert Kennedy, say no. That's what I said. Say no. Everything they've taught us, flip it around. Flip the script of everything. If they said this, do that. There's only 1% of them. There's 99% of us. We have the power to say no. That for me is what it is. And then there is no more censorship. Then we start reading each other's auras. Then we understand what's in the energy. And the one thing that never lies is energy. So when you're looking at someone's energy and you're reading their energy and feeling energy, there is no lie there. That's the only thing that's true. And if they are a lie, you're going to see it's a lie. Get what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with it taking down the public idols, it's interesting because they're allowing us to, because a lot of people have been talking about P. Diddy for ages and they were either taken off the planet or, and I don't mean in a spacecraft, I mean in a more permanent way, or perhaps they were taken in spacecraft. I mean, I don't know. But, you know, this is the thing. It's like with any time we're using something on this computer environment or on the internet it's either being allowed or it's not allowed. We've seen through the last few years how easy it is for them to change conversations and shut down narratives and ridicules. And now we're being allowed to see, and a lot of old videos are resurfacing, where, you know, certain stars have been saying this for ages, and they were ridiculed, they were put in mental institutions, they were wheeled off the game by their handlers. And I think it is because so many people are doing it now, that are realizing it and are so aware of it and are talking out and not shutting up about it, that they've got to pick their battles. They've got to pick the battles, ones that they obviously can't win, and then turn that in their favor to look like they're on our side. And it's so interesting about the energy side of things, because I thought this the other day. I mean, coming back to the Harry's donkey example, yes and no with the energy, I would say, and I'd like everyone's opinions on this, because you see, dogs are so intuitive, horses are so intuitive, every animal is, but sometimes they will go off with an abuser. So it's so interesting, this whole thing about how so much can be manipulated, and how much do we manipulate ourselves. You know, there's so many things. I've changed my opinion on so many things recently. It's incredible. You know, things that I thought I would never change my opinion on, and probably will change again, because so much effect depends on what personal experiences we've had. You know, you live in South Africa, I live in the UK. You know, at the moment in the UK, the crime levels are really growing, but you live in a country where the crime levels are completely different to anything we've had. And
it's normal for us. It's normal for us.
You're still smiling. So this is what I mean, is in terms of, it's incredible, one, how resilient the planet is, how the animals are, and us humans are. But it's also incredibly interesting when you see how much we're affected by environment, you know, because I think there's a lot of things I am scared of. Like I've never bungee jumped, and I don't want to, because I wouldn't trust the person tying the rope. But I
went bungee jump. I've skydived.
Yeah, but everyone's got their different belief systems. So if you speak to someone in the UK about going to South Africa, the first thing we think about is, one, what a beautiful country, two, how dangerous it is.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no denying that. But there again, I'm of the opinion, again, your body's created from sound, frequency, and vibration. Everyone's body, everything in this universe is sound, frequency, and vibration. And this is the information that these guys have, that they've kept quiet from us. This is a lot of the hidden information. What they've done, and more seeing it now through the whistleblowers I speak to. Obviously, a lot of the information has been taken away. They've sent the military guys to go and collect these artifacts, the pre-mud flood stuff from the living ships, which is all part of them building up. They call it Tartarus, which is hell. It's the dark forces, not Tartaria, Tartarus. Okay, difference. So basically, when we understand, and this is why it's so important for me that people listen to stuff like Caleb Jade, because now you know what is happening in the military. Now you know what they're doing. Now you see what they're being taught in the arcane. Now you see what the information the arcane keeps from us. Now you see how, and this is firsthand out of people who've been in the arcane for 35 years. There's an agenda, and it's not new. It's everywhere the same. It's the same little template wrapped differently. That's one thing I've understood.
People that haven't watched that, give us a little summary of some of the stuff, some of the key stuff that we need to all know about for that.
It's difficult, Catherine. When you listen to Caleb Jade's stuff, it's impossible to give it a summary. But what I will tell you, he's half Native American, half German. He was born into a bloodline. He was watched before he was born, and he explains how that happens with the Raphaim and the Nephilim. That already here controlling Earth. They bring in certain souls, and they they make sure that they, like his dad and his mum, were planted at a certain time. They were planted. And the abortion, the late-term abortion his mother had, when they aborted his brother out the womb, that's the first trauma that he had. And now you start seeing how they're traumatizing. So when we understand this, the then sold into his mother, didn't want him, gave him to her sister, who then sold him into Catholic services. At the age of 5, he experienced his first abuse. Then he was in the Gateway program. At the age of 10, in the Wild Hunt. Thereafter, he was cited as one of the top warriors for the US military. And they turned him into that, but you better believe it. And you see the places that they've sent them to. And that's why I say there's so much deeper. This is why I have these people on my shows, because these are the people with the knowledge that are telling us what is happening beneath the surfaces. When we have this knowledge, beyond a shadow of doubt, it's not just a crack in the surface anymore. It's now a gaping hole. And we're now shining light down there. So that's what I'm saying. And it's not just him. He, in my opinion, is probably, I can't say for sure, but from what I'm seeing, one of the few people that are on this planet that has all of that information in one body. Lots of people have snippets of it. He's experienced that all. He's a master of 9 magics. So, you got to know what aptitude this man had, the powerful of he's still alive, the power of his soul, and what they make people do, and how they send these kids into schools to corrupt their friends. There are certain kids that are coming in from these high-level satanic families, and they sent in, and of course it's done so subtly. It's all subtle.
When I was meaning summarize, I was meaning an example of sort of, so how does what some of the stuff that he's sorry, I'm just reading the comments, some of the stuff that he's exposing feed into what we'll talk about with the censorship and the dissent, and how this feels into
because it shows you how they have created this agenda. When you're looking at the secret societies, okay, they all have their principles. Now, why do you think the secret societies are so clever? Because before the secret societies even came into being, right, our forefathers understood energy. They were masters of energy. They understood completely how energy works, how many molecules, zolocules, whatever, right?
Yeah.
So then that's what our forefathers discovered. That's why we were able to harness free energy and how to do it. Okay, that's what people in the arcane are taught as well, right? So now, for example, the whole system that they've done now has been inverted. So the people in the arcane, like you will say, everyone in the arcane knows this information. He says, when I came out, I'm shocked that no one in the churches knows this. For example, they will use churches to divide and conquer and control. The church is the main way they do that. And all of that has ended up to where we are now, that we can't talk, we can't express ourselves. We've allowed ourselves to be disconnected. We've allowed ourselves to given permission, because we give permission all the time by going into a Luciferian are you there? Yeah, sorry, sure. Something happened. So yeah, we give them permission to buying a Taylor Swift movie ticket. I didn't know that 2 years ago. I mean, I would have been happy to let my granddaughter or my daughter or son, whatever, go to a Taylor Swift concert if she came to South Africa. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, understanding Luciferian language now, we understand that's giving them permission. And we understand what goes on there and the subtle rituals that hold us hostage. Everything is holding us hostage, whether it's invisible chains or whether it's unconscious conditioning or programming that they've done for many centuries, which is what they've done many centuries ago. So yeah, we are now at the end of that, and it's up to us to change it. I believe all of us came here, Catherine, for a reason. And that reason is to use our voices, speak our truth, and to shine light on this depraved system that we're living in. That, for me, is the bottom line. Anything is related. If we understand that, it will unlock and unblock everything. It's about us standing up and deciding to take back our power, take back our planet, take back our language, take back our symbols, take back our spirituality, which has been totally corrupted. Totally. It's disgusting what they've done with spirituality, really.
So let's finish off the discussion because we've only got a few minutes left. And this is an open question to everyone, Chantal, and everyone in the chat. So when we're talking about taking it back from this discussion today, and yes, Jojo Awaken, it might be worth listening from the talk because we've covered a lot today and it's been a really great discussion. So when we're talking about, the overall, the impact of the censorship, shutting down Dissent, the whole issue of self-censorship and having a really good look at ourselves for where we're really honestly self-censoring ourselves, where are we really honestly not opening ourselves up to hearing different opinions and different inputs and different ways of expressing ourselves. I'd love to hear from everyone. We'll start with Chantal, but I'm going to be keeping an eye on the chat. What can we do differently right from today? What are people really feeling drawn to do differently? Because we've been saying for a couple of years now, at least, in these communities, in our chats, right, we've got to say no, we've got to do different things. And there are some things being done. Absolutely, there are. But in my opinion, just in my opinion, nowhere near enough, and nowhere near enough people taking the action. And why do I say that? Because of where we are. So we started off with one of the discussions, and I'm scrolling back quickly to find it, where I'm just seeing who said it because I don't want to. So I think it was Carol who was saying that, they're all running scared. And I hear this a lot, but I don't see it. I see signs of it, but I also see them getting away with great control still. So in the chat, what are you going to do? What do you think? What are some suggestions for all of us? And Chantal, what are some of your suggestions and what are you going to do differently?
I think I'm quite fortunate, Catherine. I was born, the other day, my mother introduced me to a friend of hers and she says, "Is this your youngest daughter?" My mother says, "Yes, but don't worry, she was boss of her sisters." I never thought that, okay? But my point is, so for me, I'm probably not the right person to ask because I've always had the ability to express myself. Maybe not always in the best way. I had an amazing father who always said to me, "My child, you don't shut your mouth. Say your say. I'm not fighting your battles for you. If you have a problem, come to me. Then we'll figure it out." But most definitely to speak your truth. And you know what? Some people do it in an aggressive way when they're first learning how, because they are awkward with being confronted or confronting, right? Remember, confrontation is an art. What I want to suggest you do, if you're going to, let's say, have a conversation, whether it's a boss, a husband, a child, a father, a mother, whatever, take a piece of paper the night before, the day before, the week before, and write a letter. And write this letter to this person as if you were saying everything your heart wanted to say. You're not going to necessarily give them the letter, but it's going to be like a script for you that you can work from. So as long as every other thing is sitting in your head and you got this monkey mind, then things become a jumble. But if you can write it down in a letter, "Dear Catherine, I'm so pissed off because of this. What happens immediately just by writing, you've given yourself some therapy and you've sort of managed to iron things out in your mind. And then you get clarity as to what you want to say. Then you make points 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then you want to just make 5 points of the things you want to talk about. Make it simple, make it easy. And you know what I find as well is you say to the person, "Listen, I'm not used to talking, okay? I'm not used to expressing myself. This is very uncomfortable for me. It's the first time I'm doing it. So please just bear with me if I fuck it up." immediately that disarms the situation. Immediately. Because why? You're being truthful. And honesty is the highest form of love. So immediately when you can say that, or I can come here and say, listen, I've really got a sore stomach today, which is why I'm probably not going to give you the best presentation today. And then you can understand that, okay, she's feeling off. That's probably why she's not laughing as much as what she is. It's not something I said to her earlier on. You know what I'm saying? Just be open. Anything, just speak about things. Maybe I used to over explain because I felt I had to do that. But then I realized I don't have to over explain. Now I just say what I want to. But it's a process of getting there, right? So you say things and it becomes easier and easier and easier. Like riding your bicycle becomes easier. And then you want a faster one, and then you want a more expensive one, right? That's how it works. So start by writing down what you want to say, because it starts with communication. In fact, before that is the intention. What is your intention? Is your intention to heal, or is your intention to disengage or disconnect? If your intention is to disengage or disconnect, then do that. But then walk away if that's your choice. Otherwise, if you want to have a conversation, close loose ends, whatever, then you write the letter, you get it in your mind, you get it in your breath, whatever, and then you have a conversation. That's how we grow. That's how we learn.
Mm. Thank you. I love that, Jennifer. You went and handed out flyers. It's so great. This is I before my Facebook account got deleted a couple of weeks ago. Someone hacked it and deleted it. So if anyone gets a new friendship request, find me on Catherine Edwards Life and Catherine ED. I think you'll see a picture of me on Facebook. That is a new one. I love that, Jennifer, and I love the fact that I saw a few comments earlier on in the chat about people writing to their, I know we all call them different names in our different countries, but whether it's your member of parliament or your whoever's controlling your jurisdiction. I love the fact that people are really doing things like this. And I love the fact of opening up sort of different conversations and people actually walking their talk. I quite like wearing t-shirts and sweatshirts because it gets discussions going. When you're in the supermarket, you can see people looking and thinking, and sometimes it does open up discussions. So there's so many different ways people can do it. But certainly my commitment, even more so from things like this, is having those difficult conversations.
Yeah.
And just keep working on my communication style to really try out different ways where you can sort of try and open up those conversations with different personality types and different communication styles, so that you are just putting those little seeds of thoughts in other people's heads and being very open for other people putting these little seeds of thought in your head as well.
Kindness, kindness, Catherine, just kindness, kindness. That's it.
And the other thing I'm really looking at is the people that admire how they're actually living their lives, not what they're talking about doing, but how they're actually living it. And you can tell a lot about people by, the respect they command when they come in the room and, how the animals react to them, as we've spoken. So that's the other thing I'm spending more time doing, is actually observing people in real life and sort of saying, right, who really is walking their talk? Who is happy? Who is contented? Who's respectful? Who's, being a good citizen, whatever that might mean. So, well, I've loved that. We've had some really good interaction in the chat, people. Thank you so much for doing that. It's I love that, Harry, growing up as a slogan.
I'm smiling at that as well. But you know what I want to just say as well, guys, as much as what we're seeing, so much crap going on out there, we have to understand as much crap as what there is, and we see the crap because crap is tangible, okay? But on the other side, let us never forget, we that are here, we work with the God light. Don't ever forget that. That is 10 gazillion, kabillion, quadrillion times more powerful than any censorship law ever. When you hold that in your heart, you transcend that. I promise you. There are brilliant people doing brilliant things in the world right now. It is their time to go. And as we know, they're just big bully boys who want to break everything before they exit out the door, just to make sure they can be spiteful enough. That's really what's going on here. So let's just keep it cool, keep it clean, and keep it kind. That's all.
Thanks for being here, everywhere. We really love it when you're here for these lives. Thanks ever so much.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chantel. See you all soon. Have a brilliant weekend, everyone. Take care.
God bless you guys. Bye-bye.